Hello. Having to reach into my pocket here for my other pipe tamper because my cat is just off camera here, sitting on top of all my pipe tools. Anyways, today we're going to be looking again at the Yarrow method of I Ching divination, which is the most traditional method. And that doesn't really matter. But what does matter is that it makes use of the most accurate probabilities in reflecting the mathematical structure of change in the universe. And what I mean by that is that you could just, for example, you could do an I Ching casting where you would just have 64 cards. There are I Ching decks out there, and just pick one at random and pick another at random, and that's it. Now, would that give you useful information? Well, in fact, it probably would. It would give you some kind of an answer to your question, right? So from an oracular perspective, it would probably give you something useful. But if you're looking at it from the point of view of wanting very precise, detailed perspectives on the flow of change, on the flow of time, the more serious you are about it, the more you want the method used to accurately reflect the nature of change. And the nature of change, as I explained in a previous video that you can find on the playlist that this video is going to be in, the nature of change is that weak forces have more stability, strong forces have less stability. So a weak force is weak but stable. A strong force is strong but unstable. There's a greater chance that a strong force will become weak than that a weak force will become strong. Okay? And at the same time, there's more weak force in general than strong force. So how are these probabilities reflected? By 1, 3, 5, and 7. So what I mean by that is that in the Yarrow method, and in the method that we also use in my book, The Magician's I Ching, the method that I place there that's a bit easier to use than the Yarrow method, it's called the 4 stabs method. Those have an accurate probability. There's a 1-part probability of getting a yin that changes into a yang. Then you have a 3-part probability of a strong force becoming weak, of a yang changing into a yin. Then you have a 5-part probability of a strong force that is stable, and then a 7-part probability of a weak force that is stable. So what I'm actually going to talk to you about now, though, and I realize this introduction got a bit long here, is that there was a comment that was posted on the previous Yarrow method video by someone named Tai Hyung Tan, where he was saying on the counting method in Wilhelm's book is that is to say the translation by Richard Wilhelm, which is considered to be probably it was the most influential early translation, and is still probably considered to be the most popular translation. He says that the bigger pile is 2 and the smaller pile is 3, and then you add it up. I can't find the logic to that approach. When you complete the 3 steps for each line, instead of looking at those 3 piles, you just look at the other stacks of 4 stacks that they have on the side, and they could either be 6 stacks, 7 stacks, 8 stacks, or 9 stacks. This immediately connects the logic. And another benefit is that this way I cross-check to make sure I counted correctly 4 stacks every time. I paraphrased what he quoted there a little bit, but you might have wondered what he means by that if you happened across that that comment and you're not really an expert on the Yarrow method. And I'm going to talk about it because I find it very, very interesting in terms of what it signifies, that you see, the original Yarrow video that I posted here, I made it because a lot of people find the Yarrow stock method to be intimidating. They find that it has a lot of weird, complicated steps and a lot of math. And that's because the method, as it was precisely detailed in the Wilhelm book, and since then in other successive books, is really complicated. And it's pointlessly complicated because, as I showed you in that video on the secrets of the Yarrow method, it all comes down to a very simple thing, which is you look at the three little piles that are at the end of the Yarrow casting, and that tells you what type of line you have, okay? But what this person who commented is saying is that there's another way to look at it, which does involve a little bit of math in the sense that it involves counting, but it is actually exactly the same. And you might have seen, if you've read some I Ching translations, that in the descriptions of the lines, it says something like 6 in the first place or 9 in the second. Well, those 6s and 9s refer to this line is changing, right? So it says, if this is a changing line, you should read this, because if you have 6 in the first place, then read the oracle for the first line. So those changing lines, the number 6 and the number 9 refers to what Tai is talking about here. And there's a kind of complicated method of going about it, which is the method that was written down in Wilhelm's version and other versions. And there's a simple method, which I neglected to show, and I think that's why he went ahead and commented on it. Excuse me. No. So the really interesting thing about this to me is that which part will appeal more to you will probably depend on your nature, on whether you are a math person or you're not a math person. So if you are a math person, you might rather look, when you're finished doing a casting, at the right side, or whatever side you put the universe stick of the casting, or you might prefer to look at the left side. And I'm gonna show you what I mean here. So here's our layout. Let's see if I can get that closer to. That'll do. All right. So you have the sticks. You've already separated the bar here. There we go, that's better. And so here's the universal bar. So there are 50 sticks in a Yarrow stock pile for the I Ching purposes. And now this one's put aside after you've prepared the ceremony. Now there's 49 left here, right? So in a normal casting, what you'd start doing is split the piles in two, take one stock from this side and put it in your hand, and then the other pile you grab it and you're counting off little bunches of four sticks at a time, right? So that's 1, there's 2, that's 3, there's 4, and so on. You're piling them all up there until you get a remainder. So I got 3 there. You move that over, you grab the other side, and you do the same, piles of 4. And you do that on this side until you get a remainder. So at this point, the remainder is either going to be it's either going to be 8 or 9, or 4 or 5, right? So here I got 9, and then we continue, and you would just continue along that way, making the separations. Sorry. I'm working with limited space here in terms of what the camera will show, but we'll do our best. So we split that up there. This isn't really the part that I'm meaning to explain, but I might as well go through it again just so you see how the process works one more time. Right, you're dividing it into piles of 4, so there's another 8. All right, so this is the last pile, and this is the part that's really important in terms of what Ty was, the commenter was talking about. So I'm going to leave these piles here so you can visibly see them. These piles of 4 sticks. And okay, so in my hand I have left 4. So now, this means that what we have here, if you look at this, if you remember in the video, 2 large bunches and 1 small bunch, which is what we have, 2 large bunches and 1 small bunch, would make for a solid, unchanging line, right? What he's saying in the comment is that you can also look at this side. And if you add up the number of piles, here there's 7 piles. Well, a 7 is also a stable yang. They're the same thing. Now let's say that this had turned out a little differently, right? And that what I had here was 3 large piles, right? 3 large piles, so that is 7. 3 large piles is a yin line that's going to change into a yang line. And here you can see that on this side there's 6 bunches of 4. So that's 6 and 7 there, right? Or let's say it was the opposite, and what we had was less on this side. So here we have 2 little piles and 1 big one, and that is a stable broken line. And if you look here, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. And the last possible result is that you had 1 more little pile there. And so here you have 3 small piles. 3 small piles are a solid line that's going to change. But it's also 9 little piles. And so when the I Ching, sorry, this should be facing you here. When the I Ching says 6 in the first place or something like that, it's saying if you have a yin line that's about to change into a yang line in the first place. And when it says like 9 in the first place or something like that, it's saying you've got a yang line that's going to change into a yin. These are the changing lines, the 6 and the 9. That's where it comes from in the I Ching. Now, why is this cool? Well, I think it's very interesting because either way, what you're doing is you're playing with mathematics, right? The I Ching is based on mathematical principles, and the universe is based on mathematical principles. That's why the I Ching works, is because the universe itself is founded on the same principles as the I Ching. We live in a binary universe, a universe of 1s and 2s, or 0s and 1s, whatever you prefer. The point is there's a positive and a negative, protons and electrons. We live in a dualistic universe where all complexity springs from that union of opposites, or the division of union into opposites, right? And all of that can be summed up in math. But if you're not very math inclined, you just look at those three little piles on the right side of the casting, and you have a visual way of describing the line. If you want to, you can count the piles on the right. If you're that type of brain thinker, so it depends on whether you're a right brain thinker or a left brain thinker, which way you're going to look when you're doing a Yarrow stock. Either way, what it doesn't require is the complicated figuring out of numbers that you see in Wilhelm's translation. But the reason why the Yarrow method functions so well in terms of its probabilities is because they reflect that mathematical function of reality. All of reality is based on mathematics. Therefore, all advanced mysticism is also going to be based on mathematics. But you don't, fortunately, for me and among others, you don't have to be a math genius to be able to interact with that. In fact, being a math genius will probably get you stuck, obsessed over the math, which happens with some Ching people and some Kabbalists and other people like that, right? But when you look at that simplicity of structure, that all you have to do is count the little sticks on the one side or just look at the little sticks on the other, there you have a near perfect technology that allows you to reflect, to capture the essence of space, that is to say yin or yang, and time, that is to say changing or unchanging, at any second with regards to the question you are asking. That's all for today. If you like this video, in fact, if you don't understand this video, you probably need to go back and look at the earlier videos on this playlist. But if you like this video, check out the other videos on this playlist. If you're interested in more advanced I Ching studies and a process of spiritual cultivation, then get in touch about the Yi Fa Society. And feel free to share these videos wherever you like. Thank you very much.